Hi, I'm Erika of Grapefruit and Gardenia Designs and the Knit Kind podcast. I haven't recorded an episode in almost a month, and I certainly intended this year to make them a little bit more frequently than that, sort of with the goal of every other week and no more than every month. I have a kitty cat who's sneezing in the background, so I'm going to try to tape through it. I already did a take 2, but if you hear a kitty cat sneezing, I might pause. So anyhow, I have spent a lot of time the last month in terms of what I've been recording, doing videos, tutorials, and such for the Nourishment Cowl Knit Along, which is one of my designs that in partnership with Junction Fiber Mill in Vermont, we are hosting a knit along. There's still time if you're watching this and it's the first time you're hearing about it. There's still time to jump on, and I'll include the links in the description or the show notes so that you can see. It goes until February 27th. Plenty of time to knit one, probably enough time to knit two if you are a person who spends a lot of time knitting or a fast knitter. But the whole point of the Nourishment Cowl is to nourish ourselves, each other, the earth, the farm yarns that are out there, and so it's by no means meant to be a fast knit. It is really something meant to be at your own pace. It's just that we've had a great time as a community, and there's still time to join us if that's something that you're looking for. So I'll back up a little bit. What am I wearing? I actually have on the summer knit along for Junction Fiber Mill, which was the Lindal Torkle, and I did the small version. So I sort of have it tied up like a scarflet, shawlet, something. Anyway, it's very wearable like this, and it's nice for sort of those in-between days where you don't need a really heavy sweater, but you want a little bit more than a light shawl. I had a lot of fun with that, and I used Forest Floor is the colorway that I used. Forest Floor. It has beautiful oranges, yellows, goldens, really, greens, and then I used a dark charcoal brown from, I believe it was a Savage Heart Farm yarn specifically, but the Farm Fresh line from Junction Fiber Mill. So this really isn't going to be a big formal episode with a topic, but I did want to pop in, show you what's on my needles, recently finished things that are planned and upcoming, and just say hi and see how you're doing, and also give you a save the date, which I'll do in a minute, and maybe pop in with some ideas for future episodes and see if it resonates with anyone, or if you have any other suggestions of things that you'd like to hear me cover for an actual episode. So, Knit Kind, if you've watched before, you know we are a podcast that's quite informal usually, and it's bringing together knitters under the premise of kindness. We certainly know there's a lot of not kindness out there, even within people whose intentions are to be kind and inclusive and open. There can be the internet can get a little nasty sometimes. And I think whenever we can remember people's intentions and hopefully assume positive intent, we can have productive conversations and not just attack each other. So anyway, we'll have more talk about that in the future, I'm sure, values and all the things that I really enjoy talking about and exploring. Anyhow, my username on Ravelry is NittyElf40. That's where you can find my projects, and if my little son producer were here, he'd tell me to remind you to consider liking and subscribing, not because we're looking to have as many followers as possible, but because it's nice to be able to share with other fiber enthusiasts, and that is how recommendations, I guess, happen in algorithms. So that's that. The save the date is for Knit for Food. If you have not heard of this before, go ahead and Google it. Laura Nelkin, a designer in New York State, is the person responsible for it. It's a very grassroots event. I highly recommend that you explore it if it piques your interest at all in terms of participating or supporting someone who is participating. You do not have to be a knitter. You can be crochet. You can be needle felting. You can be cross stitching. You can do really any craft. Sewing. It's kind of a maker event, but it does have the name Knit for Food. And I will be considering doing a live portion here local to me in person, if possible. And otherwise, we'll maybe toy around with, in between the official Zooms for the event, maybe doing something online. I'm just kind of gauging interest, who's interested in participating this year, and what your appetite is for getting together in person. So if you are local to Metro West Boston and you'd be interested in getting together in person, please shoot me a message. I'd love to see it, and I'll kind of make a decision in I don't know how long. I'll make the decision in enough time. We'll have to have a space and figure it out. Or perhaps we can just be an online community and knit together that way. So we will see. It is an event that will be in its 4th year. The funds are all passed through. So it is using a platform called Give Butter. And in fact, I probably will record a separate episode specifically about Knit for Food. So this is, I'm going to try to give you a real quick overview and then you can find more information on the website. But all of the funds are passed through to 4 organizations, mostly focused on the United States, but one does do international work, and it's really on alleviating food insecurity. Yes, she knows about the Gilmore Girls episode, a little bit of inspiration from that. And it's a 12-hour knitting marathon. It's a lot of fun to participate, and it's not just sitting around knitting for 12 hours. It really is mindful of what you're raising money for and what you're trying to do. So I think a lot more to come on that. And I have some ideas too for things we might do in terms of appropriate collaborations, not commercially driven to make money for anyone except for the fundraiser. And by fundraiser, I mean the actual organizations receiving the money, not a professional fundraiser. My background professionally is in fundraising and advancement and development work, so I'm sensitive to all the terms. So if any of you out there are also, you'll understand why I'm saying these extra bits. I might have to edit this, it's getting a little long. Anyway, let's jump into knitting. Knit for Food, March 23rd, save the date, consider it, check it out, and there will be more to come. So in knitting, in terms of what I have recently finished, what I'm working on, what's on my needles, I have a few different things to show you. I will first show you the one that's the most whippy, and I've put it down, but I had showed you my swatch for Thea Coleman's Fog Cutter sweater. This one is in the O wool that I told you is unfortunately discontinued, but I wanted to work with it, and I had a chance to buy it locally and support a local yarn shop at the same time, and actually knit the pattern in the yarn it was called for, sort of. I'm knitting it in the O wool that is 100% wool as opposed to the one that was 50% cotton, but it's one of the 2 suggested yarns for the sweater. I rarely knit something in the suggested yarn for whatever reason. And so what I had worked on is I worked the front panel. I'm just making sure I'm actually showing you the front. Okay, so here's my progress on the front panel. It is a bottom-up sweater knitted in pieces. And it's really beautiful. And then somewhere, not right here, I started the back panel as well because I needed social knitting. And even though this isn't hard, I'm not a social cable knitter, really. Some things, like one cable on a hat maybe, but all across this, I just didn't feel like making any mistakes. So I'm gonna work a little bit of the back, a little bit of the front, and alternate. And then I'll probably finish on the front before I finish on the back, so that I can determine if I wanna do the waist shaping. There's optional waist shaping in that pattern. But little insight too, I mentioned this to the designer recently that I had it on the needles, and she said it's one of her favorites. So if you haven't seen this one and you're looking for a knit, especially if you're somebody who's looking for a knit that can be a summer-y knit and incorporate wool, check out Fog Cutter. Like I said, the recommended yarn is 50% wool, 50% cotton. And as you can see, like with those cables and that work, there's some sort of yarn over lacy type openings in there. And so it's a really nice transition. It's also got a neckline that, to me, at least where I live in Massachusetts, feels like a very transitional piece. And of course you could make it with 3/4 length sleeves, even short sleeves, and really have a piece that's a nice spring piece. So check that one out, Fog Cutter by Thea Coleman. Also on my needles, Well, here's what I've swatched for. And I'm deciding whether I'm going to do this, but the Dog Star sweater by Tin Can Knits is what I thought, not sure, I was going to be knitting for my son next. So I've swatched, and as suspected, I am getting a gauge that's more like 20 stitches to 4 inches as opposed to 22 stitches, and it's a little bit off with row gauge. So for those of you who are interested in how do I adapt gauge sweater patterns for what I want to do, I'm doing the math, and this is I've swatched in Barocco Ultra Alpaca, which is I believe 50-50 blend of alpaca and wool in natural colors. Extremely soft. It's a nice worsted weight yarn, I would say, and the pattern is a DK pattern. So this is completely expected. And then the yellow stripes here are making tracks. I think the same colorway. I think I used some of my leftovers to swatch, but I bought a new skein because, let's see if I have it in here. I already caked it, but you can see all of those fabulous colors there. And I am hoping to do Dog Star. Bottom up, colorwork yoke. I will say I didn't pay attention at first. I thought it was going to be top down, and I really just wanted a colorwork yoke on my needles, and my son is outgrowing his last sweater, so he needs a new one. Shame on me for not looking that it was bottom up. So now I'm going to have to do all that social knitting until I can get to my pizzazzy colorwork. But I am either going to, and this is something I'm happy to talk about more if people are interested in it, I am either going to knit him the smaller size with an altered gauge to get measurements that fall more within what he would wear right now, or I'm going to knit the size I was going to knit for him anyway with a different gauge because I like the fabric, and it will be a bigger sweater. I could kind of go either way. I don't want him to be swimming in it, and he does tend to be pretty slim, so I'm leaning toward knitting the smaller size at the gauge that I have. It's going to give him plenty of space in the chest. I'll knit longer sleeves, I'll knit a longer body, and the yoke depth looks like it'll be pretty good. So those are all the things that you check, and then as you go, you keep an eye out. So we'll see. I'm also, on that note, reading for the first time, Knitting from the Top Down, which I bought from one of the used bookstores, although it really is like new. It's the soft cover version, and it's a reprint, so of course the image looks older, but that's because it's a reprint. And it's interesting to compare why they say, or why Barbara Walker specifically says she started doing these top downs, and it really, obviously, it gained momentum, as opposed to some books that will tell you the advantages of bottom up. And it's interesting because some of them make the same argument for why theirs is better, which is in opposition to the other construction. I'm rambling a little bit here, I realize, but I was thinking of it because when I talked about yoke depth, one of the reasons everybody likes top down is you can try it on, right? And you can sort of see that as you go. But then something I was reading last night about knitting a bottom up sweater talked about how when you get there from bottom up, you actually can adjust it because you're closer to your bind off. And they sort of made the point that when you go top down, if you get down here and you realize it's all the way back. I think it's like anything. You can make an argument for what you want to make an argument for and say why it's better or worse, but really ultimately it's all about knowledge and knowing what to do and how to adjust no matter what you're doing. Okay, that's my bit on the Dog Star. What I've finished lately, you can kind of see behind me. Maybe I should have brought it over. I'll try to insert a picture of it being finished. I did another Nourishment cowl. That was my third one. I did that one along with the group that's doing the knit along, and it is in the other two skeins of Junction fiber mill yarn that I bought back at the beginning when they didn't even have labels on them. So I can't tell you for sure. I took pictures at the Wayland show of the little sign on the bin, so I know exactly what it was. But the blue is a farm fresh. It's a little bit different. It's more of I almost call it like a, not navy as in navy blue color, but navy as in like when you look at the institution, Navy, their color. I think of it a little bit more as that. It's like a grayish navy. It's beautiful. Again, I'll insert a close-up so you can see it. And then the Making Tracks that I have in that one is Valley Fog. So it's extremely subtle. So maybe you're looking at projects like this and you're thinking, oh, Making Tracks looks fun, but it's way too adventurous for me. Well, I'm going to show you another one I'm doing with Making Tracks right now that is a much more subtle color change. So there are Making Tracks out there that aren't wild colors, that might not make you uncomfortable with how they're going to unfold in the spontaneity and lack of predictability. So that's one. Another one that is on my needles right now, and I'm going to show you the original prototype, and then I'll tell you why I have this. I didn't intend to do this in Junction Fiber Mill. I love their yarn. There's a lot of things I am going to do with it in the future in terms of designing and knitting. It was not going to be this cowl, and there are reasons, but sometimes you have to pivot when life makes you pivot. So I was in a situation where I was home with my son. He was sick out of school for a few days. And I needed to make a video for my new pattern that is in testing right now. And in order to diversify what I had already done and not do it in the same yarn again, I looked in my stash and I ended up saying, you know what, I'm going to do it in Making Tracks. Let's just see how it turns out. So here's where I am. I'm not quite finished and it's not blocked. So it's going to look very different. I have this bit left to finish. So I'm going to hold up the prototype to explain to you the construction of it. But the reason I'm showing you this is this blue that's in here is Making Tracks. It's Bird Song. And it's not going to show on here. Maybe if I get the light this way. It is the most gorgeous blue. It is like from a dark navy-ish, indigo-ish blue straight through to the brightest royal blue. And the change is really subtle. Can you see that? And so here, this is an example of playing with a Making Tracks and a color changing yarn. And you can see kind of the marled look up here where I started, but not having all the colors. So that's a fun way to do it. So we're going to see, I'll show you when it's blocked. We're going to see how it compares with the original design. It's always fun to play around with yarn substitutions. It's just a matter of knowing what you're doing and why. And there's things you'll do as a designer, and then there's things you'll do as the knitter, right? And so I'm really excited to have a little diversity and see how this is going to turn out in a more rustic yarn. Now I'll show you the original design. And this is also a non-superwash, but it's an organic merino that is extraordinarily soft. So there is really nothing farm yarny about this at all, but it is organic merino. This is the original prototype here. Got the color on it. I'm going to probably do a whole segment just on this, so I don't want to share too much with you now. I will tell you it's called the 700 Fence Posts Cowl. I know it's a little bit of a funny name, but I'll tell you why when I record the whole piece just about it. You know, I like to put stories and deeper meaning into my designs, and so it has to do with that. So hopefully that whets your appetite a little bit. The construction of it is really cool. If you've not knitted, this is a seamless cowl design that's knitted on the bias. And what that means, at least in the terms of this construction, is you're knitting what looks like it's going to be a triangle shawl. You're joining it together and knitting in the round for a while, and then you're changing where your beginning of round or end of round or row would be, and you're knitting almost like another triangle shawl. So you increase at the beginning, knit even, and then decrease at the end, and you end up with a cowl that is seamless. And there's some ends to weave in, but not as bad as it looks, because a lot of times you're just carrying up a garter edge seam here, and you're just carrying the non-working yarn with the exception of areas like this where it's a larger section. So the original yarn I designed in, So Happy Jane, organic DK merino, easily substituted with the So Happy Jane superwash, and those are extraordinarily interchangeable with so many yarns on the market. So I do like to highlight certain makers. I like to use yarn that I like. This was part of a club. I've designed in it before, but explore her by all means. I highly recommend her yarn, or find another yarn that is either local to you, a hand dyer. I have a few other recommendations in the pattern. So we'll talk about that one when the pattern comes out and I do a whole piece on it. But it's a fun construction. It's something different. As you know, I like in my work to maybe give you a technique you haven't tried before, and I just think that's a super neat. See how every side is different, right? And then I'll show you when I do the piece on it. It actually would have matched this. I could have worn it. To wear it, I kind of fold it in and then have it drape a little bit. So this is the DK version. I have not designed and published in fingering weight yet. And one of the things I wanted to do was to adapt this to also be a fingering weight pattern. So I am going to make a few tweaks. This was the fingering weight prototype, and it's a nice, squishy but also airy and drapey design, and I am going to add a couple of more sections so I can really make the most of the yarn and make it, well, I've got ends everywhere here, but really make it a substantial piece, and you can see how it kind of drapes when you wear it. And what I will have, I think, is I will have either the DK or the fingering pattern available by itself, or an ebook where you can get both of them and have a discounted price for getting both of them. So stay tuned on that. 700 Fence Posts Cowl. See if I regret that name in the long run. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun to pick it. It's about a friendship, and it's not a friendship between me and someone else. It's a friendship between two people, two fiber friends that I have met. So let's see. On the needles, I think I've shown you everything I have on the needles, everything off the needles recently. And then my other finished object, which I have had done for a while, but I haven't shown you, I think these are my first 2 spins entirely done on my Ashford 3 e-spinner, which was, ooh, pretty, huh? It was my big Christmas gift. So I asked Santa and family and everybody to pitch in on that, and it was the best. I love it. I'm really having a great time. It came from the New England Fiber Festival and from a shop called Mainely Fiber, like the state of Maine, Mainely Fiber. And this is a Polworth with a little tonality in there. And this one is a blue-faced Leicester with some gold, some of that same teal in there, and some brown. And if you watch my the Instagram feed, I'm not a huge Instagram person, but I try to do enough of it to keep up and stay connected to everybody. So I put a reel post story on there with the spinning, and I've been spinning another comb top braid that came from, I think, Frabjous Fibers, and it's also jewel tones. I have not finished that skein yet, which means I have plied it. It is sitting on a bobbin. I'm letting it rest for at least 24 hours, but you know how life is. It might be a lot more than 24 hours. And then I will put that into a hank. I will wash it, thwack it, pull it out, all the things I don't know all the proper terms for, but that is how you finish hand spun yarn afterwards, and then let it dry, and then I will show you that. And I'm kind of hoping that those 2 skeins I just did and that one might all play together in some really beautiful way that I would like to start. I have so many design plans. I would like to start designing with some hand spun as well. Not too much. I know not everybody spins, but there are so many things you can interchange. Making tracks is a great example. Spin Cycle, Feederbrook Farms, other hand spun. Now Kitty Cat's calling for lunch, so I think she just likes to be on the podcast. So anyway, there's plenty of commercially available yarns, or you can buy hand spun from someone too. But I think that is a place I'd really like to continue to explore in my fiber journey, is designing with that. So that's really all I have to show you. It's just a little show and tell today. And I would like to put out there that if anybody has a topic they'd like to cover, please, by all means, let me know. And it's something I'll think about whether I have things to say that would be of interest to you about it. One of the things I thought about with all these color changing yarns and hand spun yarns is the topic of color management. When you have a skein of yarn that has different sections in it, I talked about it a little bit with my Read This hat about how I wanted the bright pink right on the brim and how I was prepared to do certain things. I've seen other patterns come out recently, and I thought, ooh, if I were going to make that, I would want my colors to fall just this way. And you embrace the spontaneity sometimes of these yarns, but other times you want to boss it around a little bit and make it work for you too. So if color management is interesting to you, let me know. We can look at doing that. And then otherwise, I just had some things I wanted to share in terms of some of the things I've been hearing discussed recently. So maybe I'll do another chat that's a little bit less formal and kind of put some things out there that I hope would be empowering and helpful to knitters as we all try to knit kindly and live kindly together, which is always my message. I hope you enjoyed this little catch up. I hope, see, she just wants to be on the podcast and wants lunch. Say hi, Bells. So I hope you enjoyed this little chat, and I hope you'll look into Knit for Food. And I hope that you are having a wonderful weekend. If you're watching this, actually, I don't know when I'm going to get it published, but it's the weekend for me now. So wherever you are and whatever you're doing, I hope that you have a great day and that you treat others well, and really stop and think about the way that you are talking to people, treating people, and do what you can to help each other. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon.